One thing we've been trying to do at these sessions, all the sessions we've been having, is to try to frame the topics that we're covering and kind of give you ARC's view on it. Now, analytics is an area that I think is, I hear everybody using that term today. It's a very popular term, used by everybody in different ways. I'm not going to say our way is the right way or not. It's just a view. But the one point we'll be seeing, I'll be trying to make, is I think you have to take a pretty broad view of analytics today so you can get additional value. So with that said, what I want to do is just, I have a pretty short presentation. I just want to talk about first to make the point that, analytics, I think, as a topic is something, I think the value of that is clear today. Then I want to talk about analytics with respect to industrial enterprises, and I'll define what I mean by industrial enterprises. And in that case, I think we see a lot of mixed solutions occurring out there. And we think the time has come to really have one analytics strategy for an operational strategy, but a comprehensive kind of strategy for analytics, and I'll describe what we mean by that. And then I'll kind of contrast that and compare it with some of the other solutions we see out there. And then at the end, there's some conclusions, recommendations. That's my job to do that, to give you some takeaways. So it's still not working. Push, can you go to the next slide? The right one, correct, Greg? I have a thing on my hand, but I don't think it. Yeah, could you just move it ahead for me? Okay. With respect to analytics, we see many applications. I go to a lot of conferences, and a lot of the big software suppliers today have analytics solutions, and you go there and you hear great reports, and I trust they're all true. I mean, they're good reports and good examples of how analytics is being used in a lot of business areas. In particular, you see a lot in sales and marketing type of applications to understand the market, to sense things and do stuff like that. We see it in financial performance. You might see it in product development and some things like that. And one thing that's enabling all of this, and is a big focus today, is big data. And by big data, I mean, large quantities of data about things. And the kinds of large data or big data that we see with the solutions you hear about at an enterprise kind of solution providers conference is things like customer data, where they're trying to understand what the people are buying, where they're buying it, online sales data, which is more telling you what products and what features people are looking at, because they actually track as you look at things today. Social media, too. We see people getting a lot of data from that about you if they can. Then, it's really it's getting people insight into what are the trends and what kinds of things do people think about things. And that's great big data. I meant it's good big data, not great big in the sense of bigger than big. And one thing I think is true to demonstrate the value, we see a lot of positive reports and tremendous benefits people are generating from case studies. But when you just look at the investments being made today and what they're investing in today, you see a lot of investments being made into petabyte-type storage systems. And the idea of that is people want even bigger data today, enormous amounts of data they want to store. We're seeing things with in-core memory solutions for analytics. And the focus of that is to make analytics a little faster, again, so people can slice and dice and analyze and do whatever they want to do with large amounts of data. There's analytics for the masses. We see a trend on that where some companies are trying to make analytics more digestible by people, make it more casual users. There's tools, and I'm trying to avoid saying supplier names here, but there's some very good ones here in the way people are addressing that issue. And mobile analytics. Now, the idea of mobile is now may enable people to use it even in more places, and again, to expand the base. So, and when you look at that, these investments in those areas are enormous that companies are making. So I think it's clear that there's value in analytics in general, this ability to collect big data, to analyze it, and to extract information from it. I'm going to try again. Can you do that again? Thank you. Now, if you look now about industrial enterprises, what I call industrial enterprises or industrial organizations, a lot of times we use the word manufacturers, but that doesn't cover the whole range of companies that I consider industrial. To me, industrial companies are companies that make something that they sell to end users or sell to other businesses or produce something in that sense. And the kind of companies in that range would be things like manufacturers. They could be in the process industries, what we call hybrid or discrete industries, raw material providers, oil and gas and mining companies, Power generation, transmission, distribution, telecommunications companies, again, they make something. In this case, it's more of a service. It depends on how you look at power. Transportation companies or other industrial organizations with air and rail and roads and water systems and things like that. And those companies, they're kind of different in a sense than a consumer goods company or a retail industry where we see a lot of use of analytics. And the big difference there, I think, is those companies make something. Those things they make have these tremendous benefits, economies to scale. So they're kind of driven to build very expensive assets that they then focus on optimizing the operation of that. And they have complexity in these assets, and the operations within the asset become their central focus. And in order to survive, return on assets and things like that becomes very important. That's one of my kind of focus areas, by the way. I'm kind of biased towards asset management issues. But they also have to maintain, consistent product quality, delivery, and service, and things like that. And, they also live in a world with high regulatory requirements and sustainability. Can you advance? Now, this is what I kind of draw a picture of an industrial organization, how I try to distinguish them. This is just a Sid Snitkin picture of an organization where I put executive management in the middle, and around it I have all the kind of departments that you might find in an organization. And you always have kind of administration, you have sales and marketing, but you also have plant and facility design and build, people who build plants for you, build assets for you. You have people who develop products for you or develop processes. You have people who operate those assets. And by operations, I'd mean operations and maintenance, the whole range of operational issues. And then you often have organizations that service things. And what I'm kind of distinguishing is industrial organizations that are the ones that have those things that are covered in the black, with the black boundary. Now, a lot of analytics has been used to service the other ones to date, whether it's administrative or sales and marketing, which is good, nothing wrong with that. But internally, there's other analytics, okay? When I say analytics, I'm talking about the packages that I mentioned in the first slide. To push. Now, these people have questions, just the same kind of questions that sales and marketing people have. Different issues, but different, similar kinds of questions. I mean, they're asking questions like, what kind of equipment is giving me the best performance? On projects, what projects are the best? Which projects are the worst? Which suppliers are good? Which suppliers are bad? What are best practices? People will do things and they just want to monitor performance relative to practices and isolate which ones produce the best performance. You have the same kind of thing down in operations. You might be saying, which of our processes are better or worse? What products are working better or worse? And then you ask questions, okay, those that are better, why are they better? What's driving performance to be better or worse, okay? So all of those departments have those kinds of questions, which are very analogous to the questions the sales and marketing people have that they use analytics for today. Could you go to the next slide? And I think, or we think, industrial enterprise already have big data. I mean, the same kind of stuff that someone in sales and marketing is getting as customer data, you're already collecting in your facilities, on your products, or on your processes. You have enormous volumes of data about that. And some companies, and when I say that, I mean things like process data, production quality data, equipment and reliability data, that type of data, enormous quantities of data and information. And a lot of companies are using it. It's not like, people haven't thought of this before. A lot of people are using that, and a lot of them are using it to control their performance. I tend to distinguish between controlling and improving. And controlling is when you use that data to monitor your performance, to track where you are, to generate things like alerts and KPIs that might cause you to react quickly. People talk about lagging and leading indicators. It's still looking at performance today and trying to use it to control performance. And there are some companies, not all of them, that tend to take that data and try to mine it, to try to identify root causes of problems, to try to find ways they can improve their performance, benchmarking themselves across facilities, across other players and things like that. And some might do simulation and optimization. So I think the value of big data, the value of the information itself has already been proven as well in the industrial enterprise, okay? Again, I don't think this is anything new I'm saying. Good. Now, when you look at the big data in industrial enterprises, it's different data, as I just mentioned, than that what you see in the sales and marketing organizations. And, one of the things, though, is it's all hidden in different databases. We've all talked about this for years. It's in little silos everywhere. Everybody has data, and every application you buy is going to collect more data for you. They do a very good job of collecting the data. And they all focus on one set of data, and they build it, and you have a database, and everybody buys a server for every application they have, probably. There's a bunch of separate servers, I think. And can you click? And many of those applications, and by the boxes, the orange ones, I meant these databases that have different applications. I mean, operations has a bunch of different databases. And a lot of the applications that manage those databases already have embedded analytics. We see that being very popular today. You know, I come from the asset lifecycle management side. That's one of my big focus areas for ARC. And you go to maintenance or reliability, there's very powerful analytics used there. And they do a lot of analysis. And they're embedded. And those are good. They're very good, actually. But they're also limited to the data they have in their database generally. Now, can you go to the next slide? There's also, we can try. There's also companies that have invested in, you know, manufacturing intelligence solutions or operational intelligence solutions. And just to put those in perspective, what they're really doing is they're collecting all of the data across those databases. People say, we need to integrate information, and they do that. The scope that I have seen in general for that is around the operational area. You know, you have one that'll integrate production data with maybe maintenance data, with procurement data, and things like that. Now, what we think is, you know, those are all good. Those are good solutions. It's good to see that. People are using it. But we really think that you aren't taking it far enough yet. You can go further. And we really think that industrial organizations are ready to go further with analytics and the capabilities of analytics. I'll describe in a moment. And two reasons for that. One is, and I've heard people mention it here, you know, is people. We all talk about people, and that's because it's a central issue, is people. And in this case, I think the people are ready. You know, you see everybody today, almost everybody, using the internet and things like that to find information to help them with their personal decisions. I know I do it all the time, even though I'm a quantitative. My wife does it a lot, and she's not a quantitative person. But she's constantly going through the internet to collect information. And she's very comfortable with that. And so certainly you should be able to do the same thing at work if you have a worker. Certainly I think we all know that's in the future. I think it's today, actually. It's not the future. I'm a little gray myself, too, but I think I'm pretty up to date on the technology. The other thing is, I think when I explain them second, or in a minute, but you know, I don't think you should be limiting your capabilities of these people who are ready to use analytics. You shouldn't limit their capabilities. I don't think you should expect them to use tools that there's no reason in the world they should know how to use. But on the other hand, you're going to have people that are very good on the shop floor that are kind of quantitative people. They probably study their stock investments at night, and they use tools far advanced to what you're giving them right now. So if you have people like that, you don't want to limit their ability to do that kind of analysis for you, to drive value out of that information. And there's several ways that we see information or capabilities, analytic capabilities, potentially being limited. One is if you're using embedded analytics, for example. As I mentioned, they're very good, and I'll say that many times, and they're real good because they're fit for purpose. But in a sense, you're limiting yourself to what that supplier thinks is the way you want to analyze data and the capabilities you need. And they're going to address the most basic, not the most basic, the most popular, most useful. But you're going to have people that want to go further than that. And they may not have the tools to do it, and there's no way for you to add it. You also don't want to have to wait for the next release to be able to get a capability that you need. We also see limitations from the perspective of limitations to one application. You have data in one application, like a reliability engineer should certainly be able to look at other information from other databases without multiple logons, learning different systems, and all that kind of stuff. And also, one thing I think, and I think we think, is you shouldn't limit yourself just to dashboards and KPIs and information that's telling you about what happened today. You should think bigger than that. Can you go to the next slide? So here's kind of what we think you should be thinking. Our suggestion is, or our perspective on analytics is organizations, industrial organizations, really need to have kind of an overall operational analytics strategy. And if you look at the picture up here, when I say that, I mean, it's an IT issue. I mean, there's also cultural issues with analytics and everything else, but I'm talking primarily in this slide about the software or the IT platform. But you need to say, I need a strategy that has certain capabilities. And if you look at the picture, you're going to see it's pretty much the same as the kind of solutions that are used at the top level for marketing or something like that. It has the same structure because that's the capabilities that are needed, but it doesn't necessarily mean the software is the same. I mean, if you look at the bottom, you know, you need to have a platform in place to collect and validate information. I just came from a presentation where there was a big discussion on quality control and validation of information. Again, in this case, the connectors you have and the formats and the data you deal with is going to be quite different than transactional data you get when you sell stuff to customers. And so you need different connectors for that. Above that, you need to have some kind of software to transform and enrich things. And I heard somebody else mention it today, the idea of contextualizing information. That's very, very important in the kind of information we deal with in the operational world. Above that, you need to have some kind of capabilities to analyze the data in real time, generate alerts, do KPIs, tell people what's happening right now. But one thing that I don't see in a lot of solutions, you need to also kind of store that information in some way that you can later mine it and use it. And you know, there's lots of different methods today. I'm just suggesting that you think in terms of that because a lot of people focus a lot on today, not on the future, or on how else they can drive value out of that information. And then at the top, you need to present and invest it. Now, at the top, usually you see presentation. Actually, when the first time I made this picture, it was a triangle, and the top was presentation. And I realized that's not what I mean. One thing is presenting information. There's lots of ways to present it. And by the way, in the industrial world, I think there's a lot of unique ways to do it with 3D models, geospatial maps. There's all kinds of networks. There's other ways you might want to do it. The flow of material in a plant. You may want to present information that way to make it more sense, you know, give context to it, to an end user. But then you also want to enable people to explore that data with kind of analytic type tools. They might want to do data mining. You might want to look for correlations. And that's something, in addition, that's something driven by the end user, by the user of the system, not somebody at the bottom. And, you know, the system really needs to kind of address all that range of people. You know, again, you need to have a system that supports those different needs. I think certain customization is needed, but you can build on that. But it's no different, again, than you're talking about with a general analytics package, which should support everybody from executives down to basic knowledge workers. Now, let me compare what I just described with what I mentioned earlier and what I think is out there today, just to put it in context. You know, at the bottom, and the order doesn't necessarily mean that I think less of any solution, all right? Let me put it that way. At the very bottom, though, I have embedded analytic solutions. I personally like embedded analytic solutions. I mean, if you're going to do reliability and you have something that does Weibull distributions for you, that's not something you normally need in other areas of the plant. But you need that, and the tool is built for that. It's very good analytics. But the problem is it's very much limited to a very restricted set of data. Okay? So they're good in the sense that they have good fit-for-purpose tools, but they're weak in the sense of integration. If you go to the next level, you have manufacturing intelligence. And again, there's a range of products out there, and these terms are used very loosely by us all. I throw myself in that pot. So it's hard. I don't want to say everybody's manufacturing intelligence solution has or doesn't have a certain feature, but generally, they're very good at connecting products. They'll go to multiple applications, multiple data sources, bring the data together, aggregate it. They'll let you calculate things with it. They'll produce wonderful dashboards. They'll even maybe let you do what I might call drill downs, but sometimes they're not drill down in the sense of analytics. Sometimes drill downs is just that you have a set of KPIs, for example, that are structured. And so you can drill down into the pieces that make up the higher level calculation. It's not the same as doing slicing and dicing of a data, of a dimensional model. So they're very good. Their value really comes in the integration and the presentation. It takes data and brings it to maybe managers better than individual ones would. But the thing that I think they're missing, actually, is when you go to the third level, I add that little box I just show as analytics, but it's the idea of storing stuff. One aspect of it is storage of information. Now, again, you know, in the industrial world, you have historians which store information too, but there's other information you store. They may store process variables, but you want to combine that and contextualize it with all your other information, and you need the history in those too, somehow, okay? So that third level is what I'm talking about. And the idea is you need to have a strategy at least at that level. Now, you can compare it with the top level, essentially the same concept. I'm not suggesting here that you take, you know, again, I'm not going to say any suppliers' names, but their business analytics package and just use it. If that works for you, do that. But you probably have to augment it in certain ways, augment the presentation, augment the connectors. But conceptually, the platform, the capabilities are aligned quite well. Next one. Now, one thing you get out of this, I think, as a side, I happen to teach statistics in the MBA program, so I'm kind of biased towards these kind of capabilities. But, you know, there's a lot of capabilities that one can call analytics. And To me, I kind of built this little step of analytic capabilities. You know, you can have capabilities that just report, collect data and report it. I've seen people call that analytics. You have people that, things that monitor information, that maybe produce it as dashboards and scorecards, and they would call that analytics. Above that, you can go to assessing information. In that case, you start doing things like KPIs and alerts and stuff like that. You're really trying to see what the data is saying. Above that, you start getting into using the data to explain the problems. So in that case, you want to slice and dice. You want to try to do correlations and that type of functions. And then you can keep going up the table. Now, as you go up the table, you're extracting more value out of the data. I don't think everybody's going to want to go all the way up that table. You know, there's tools up there I certainly don't use, but there are times somebody does, and every business probably has people that do, and why shouldn't those people be given the tools they need to do it and have access to all of the data that they need to do it with, okay? So the big advantage, I think, of the new one is more analytics. Can you go on? And one of the benefits of that, I like this chart. I got it out of I can't remember the guy's name. I should. He wrote several books in analytics, and I stole the picture. I stole the words. I made the picture, of course. But the idea, though, I like the way he broke it down. When you look at analytics and information, you know, you have information about the past, information about the present, and you have the future. You don't have information about it, but there's the future. And there's things where you're just extracting out of it known things, looking to just extract information. And then the other one is where you're developing new insights. And if you look at the manufacturing intelligence solutions today, they tend to focus on what happened and what's happening right now, okay? And to do those other answers, and if you had a real analytics package, a full package, kind of the thing I described, you can start answering questions like what will happen if you don't do something, if you do something. You can answer questions and drive new insights, like why and how did such a thing happen? What should you do about that now? And what's the best thing we can do, okay? All of those are different analytic capabilities. I tried to map that to that previous slide, if you see that there. It's not a perfect map, but those tools are the kind of tools you need to do that. And you normally don't have that if all you have is a capability to do KPIs and calculations and things like that. So that was my presentation. Let me just conclude with just the comments or the takeaways, if we're going to say that. You know, I mean, again, I make the point, I think the value of analytics is clearly proven today. I don't think people dispute that. But again, I think it's been primarily proven in areas like sales and marketing, where you have a lot of data. I mean, I've seen lots of cases of that. And I think one thing that validates that again is this driving interest in big data. People are going for big data. I'm going to spend 43 more seconds now. I have a little timer here. But the point of this is really that organizations, industrial organizations, have big data. It's not like you don't have it. You have the data there to mine. Oftentimes you don't have the systems or you don't have it connected in a way to do that. And we're suggesting that people at least take that vision and start to develop strategies for that. I'm going to stand here for 19 seconds. I'm joking. All right, thank you very much.